Hey, welcome to Vance Tried It. Today we're going to be trying to make some Philadelphia cheesesteak inspired sloppy joes. So I have my pan all heated up over here, and I have just a little over a pound of hamburger. We're going to put that in there and get that cooking. Now, I have always been a fan of sloppy joes, and I can neither confirm nor deny that it has anything to do with Adam Sandler in his Lunch Lady song, Sloppy Joe, Sloppy Joe, Sloppy, Sloppy Joe. But I do like a good Sloppy Joe, and I don't mind like Manwich or something like that, but I kind of like to make my own also. Give it my own flavoring so that it's exactly what I want as far as consistency and flavor goes. And you know, some places they don't call it a sloppy joe. They call it a loose meat sandwich. Now, I think that maybe, in some people's opinion, there's a little bit of difference between a sloppy joe and a loose meat sandwich, because a sloppy joe tends to have a ketchup or a tomato sauce type base to it, a binder that holds it together. And a loose meat sandwich maybe has a little bit less of that. But they're pretty much the same thing. Usually have pretty much the same flavor profile. Now this one is supposed to kind of emulate a Philly cheesesteak flavor base. And I'm going to be putting the link to the recipe down in the description. And so when you go look at that, hey, while you're down there, if you would go ahead and like this video, subscribe, comment, let me know what is your favorite type of sloppy joe. Do you like Manwich? Do you make it from scratch yourself, or do you prefer what you might call a loose meat sandwich, and would be offended maybe that someone would call your sandwich a sloppy joe? Just let me know down in the comment section, and I'd love to hear from you. And hey, while you're down there, also don't be afraid to let me know if there's something you would like me to try making. And if it is reasonable, then I will look into giving it a try. So, some of you maybe have eaten a lot of sloppy joes at school, because it just seems to me that this was a lunch lady favorite. That's why Adam Sandler sang about it. The sloppy joes that you get at school. And depending on where you went to school, they maybe had more or less flavor. Now, I have to tell you that my mom, for a time, was a lunch lady at our school. And she was a pretty good cook, and the kids really liked it when she was working there, because she wasn't afraid to put some seasoning, some spices, some herbs in the food and give it some flavor, because she kind of had the attitude if she was going to make it, she was going to make it taste as good as she could. And also, you should know, that was back in the 70s. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but I am that old. And I know that things were different back then. There were a lot less regulations, and I'm sure that lunch ladies have a lot more to deal with nowadays than they did back then with exactly what they can do. But I feel like the tendency in most school cafeterias is to just get something prepackaged, pre-made, heated up, and not actually make a lot of food for the kids, which is a shame. Because, let's be honest, a lot of the kids going to school, they go home, and nobody's making food for them there. And, hey, if you were one of those kids, I'm glad you're watching these videos so you can figure out how to make food. So our hamburger is browned up. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the hamburger out of here, or at least most of it out of here. I'm not going to be too concerned if there's a couple of little nuggets of hamburger left in this pan for what I'm getting ready to do next, but I want to get the bulk of it out of here. You know, the nice thing about this is going to be a quick recipe. My anticipation is that I will not be cutting out from here or really editing a lot out of this. So just my stream of consciousness, my talking is just kind of what you're going to get. And so we've got most of the meat out of there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take we have a tablespoon of butter. Put that in there. We have some red bell peppers and one red bell pepper, and I took one jalapeno and put in here. And then I have one onion. This is a Vidalia onion. So it is already sweet, and this will just make it sweeter. This is 8 ounces of mushrooms. This is fresh mushrooms that I'm putting in here. And it looks like a lot of mushrooms. But the thing about the mushrooms is once they start heating up, they're really going to shrink down, and it's not going to look like there's as much mushrooms as it does when you first put it in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a stir. No, I'm not giving it a spur. I'm giving it a stir. And then I'm going to let it set for a couple minutes. So don't feel like whenever you're sweating off or cooking down your vegetables that you have to stir them constantly, because you don't. You want to let them sit there in your grease or in your butter. In this case, there's both the grease from the hamburger and the butter in there. Let them cook in there. Let that flavor start to seep into the vegetables a little bit. And let the vegetables get a little bit of a sear, a cook on them. It'll give them some added texture, so they're not just going to be mushy, but they'll have a little bit of texture to them. And it'll really add to the flavor. And so while those are doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and put some salt in here. And I'm going to put some pepper in here. And I always prefer the fresh ground of both salt and pepper. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of a pepper fan. So I tend to put a lot of pepper in there because I like the flavor of the pepper, especially the fresh pepper. And this is going to have a lot of flavor to it already. And so we don't want to underwhelm it, if you know what I mean, by not putting enough pepper in there. There's no need to put pepper in there if you're not putting enough in there to taste. So we're just going to let this continue to cook down here. So I don't know if y'all noticed this, but I got a haircut today. And so now typically I go to the beauty school to get my hair cut. But look, the ladies there, they're usually very sweet ladies, but they're just learning how to cut hair. Now I go there because it's really cheap, and they need somebody to practice on, and I figure, well, why not me? But since we're getting ready to go on this Alaska vacation, I don't know if you heard about that. I talked about it in one of my other videos. My wife and I are getting ready to go on an Alaska vacation with her parents, and so we kind of figured maybe I needed to have a good haircut to be going on vacation. So I went to the actual beauty shop, the beautician, somebody who has been doing it for a while and actually knows what they're doing. So let me know what you think of my new haircut. And it is what it is. There's no changing it now. But you know, the great thing about men's haircuts is if I go somewhere, like if I go to the beauty school and I get somebody and she just is not very good and hasn't really learned very much yet, and she just butchers my hair, I can always just take the trimmers, get a number 1 or a number 2 guard out, and just give myself a buzz cut. Heck, if worse comes to worse, I could just shave my head and I would look fine. I think I probably would look pretty good with a shaved head. So, for men, it's a little bit easier, a little less daunting to go ahead and go to a beauty school to get our hair cut. And look, for the most part, the girls there do a pretty good job. Not perfect, but pretty good job. Really the biggest problem they have is they're really afraid they're going to cut too much hair off. In fact, that's what they'll tell me, because if they don't cut enough off, they can always cut some more off, but they're always afraid that if they cut too much hair off and the customer doesn't like it, then there's no going back. They've already cut it off. But I always tell them, hey, you can't cut too much hair off of my head because it's not really my favorite thing to go get my hair cut. And so the shorter I get it cut when I get it cut, the longer I can wait to go back and get it cut again. So that's kind of my journey with my haircut and my hairdo. Let me know what you think about all that. So we have our vegetables, and they are cooked down now and looking good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this meat back in here. And we're going to add to all this here we're going to add, this is 2 tablespoons of ketchup and 1 tablespoon of Worcester. We'll put this in here. See, now you know it's a sloppy Joe. It has ketchup in it. We got that going on. Now, this here is 1 cup of beef stock, and I added 1 tablespoon of cornstarch in here, and this will allow it to thicken up. Make sure we get all that beefy corn starchy goodness in there. And now we're just going to cook this. We're not reducing the heat any, okay? We are, in fact, going to just turn up the heat a little bit. That'll activate that cornstarch. So the thing with cornstarch is the heat activates it. And then when it starts to boil, that cornstarch really starts to activate, and it starts to bind everything together in there. But you're really not going to see what it's doing until you turn the heat back down. So you need, when you're using cornstarch, like a slurry like that, that's what I call it. When you're using a cornstarch slurry, go ahead and put it in there and get a good boil going on that. Let some of that water content boil out of there. That's also going to cause your sloppy joes or whatever it is you might be making to thicken up some. And that's really what we want to do. We want it to thicken up, bind together, so it will stay on a bun nice and good. It's looking good, and it's smelling good. It's even sounding good. You can hear that, the sound of it cooking. I really like the sound of food cooking. That may sound strange, but getting a good boil or a good sear on a steak or a burger, and you hear that, you put it in there and you got that sizzle from the skillet. I like that sound, probably because I like to eat, and that's like the dinner bell ringing. I'm like Pavlov's dog or something. I hear that sizzle or that boil, and I think, oh, it's almost time to eat some of this good food. Okay, so we've got that, and it's starting to thicken up. And now what we have here is we have 8 ounces of provolone cheese. Now, the interesting thing is, when I went to the store to get provolone cheese, they did not have any blocks of provolone cheese, but that's all right, because what I did is I bought 8 ounces of sliced provolone cheese, and it's really the same price as getting a block is to get it sliced. And then I just cut them into chunks, like just that size right there. And then we're just going to put that in here. We're going to mix it in. We're going to let it melt right in to all this meaty, vegetable-y goodness right here. Oh yeah, you can see it melting up in there. But we want it to get really good and melted. Okay, it's starting to melt down really good in there. So, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it off of the heat. Whew. Take it off the heat right over here. I'm going to put a lid on it. I'm going to put this lid on it right here. And now I'm going to fix up some buns. I'm going to reach right over here, grab another skillet. I'm going to turn this heat down a little bit. And what I have here is I just have some sliced white hamburger buns. You could get some brioche buns. You could get some King's Hawaiian buns. You get whatever buns you want. But this was the cheapest version. And I'm kind of a value guy. So what I want to do is I want to get a couple of these ready to toast up here. And this is just some butter softened with just a little bit, not a whole lot, just a little bit of garlic powder. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Vance, why are you spreading that butter on the bun with a spoon? Well, the answer It's really simple. This is the spoon I use to mix up the garlic powder in here. And I didn't see any need to dirty up a fork when the back of this spoon would work perfectly well for this. See, just get it like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're just going to brown these up. When you put them in the pan, just push them down a little bit. Get some good contact right there. You can hear the sizzle when you do it. Because you know we like the sizzle. We already talked about that. And I'm going to slip over here. To grab a plate. And that is going to work just right. Had to grab another plate. This will be my wife's bun here because she's going to want some of this when we're done here. But for y'all, I'm going to give it a try right here, right now. I'm going to just get this little spoon here. Oh, look at that cheesy goodness there, would you? Ooh, doggies. That is what we're talking about. Yeah. Cheesy, meaty, vegetable-y goodness. That's what we like to see. Now comes the real test. How does it taste? Let's find out together. Yeah, I mean, it does have that like reminiscence of Philly cheesesteak with the vegetables and the cheese and the meat. And let me get another bite of this. Hey, look. I can't tell you that this tastes exactly like a sloppy Joe. It doesn't. But it is really good. The flavors combine together so well. If I was doing anything different, I might just add some like Italian seasoning in there to just kind of put a little bit more of that pop in there. But hey, this is a good sandwich. I tried it. You should too.